We're just today is a showcase session on our experience with finance apprentices at University Hospital Sussex. So I'm just going to take you on a whistle-stop tour of our experience of the first time that we've had a whole cohort of apprentices within the trust and the finance department, and how that was tasked and looked at by the team. So I think I'll leave questions till the end. I won't do introductions, and I'm just going to do a short presentation. So perhaps if you've got any questions, just put them in the meeting chat, or at the end we'll have a bit more time as well. But yeah, I mean, feel free to jump in if there's anything burning that you want to talk about. So let me just bring up my presentation and we can get started. Right, so my name is Aflaq Khan. I'm Head of Financial Development at University Hospital Sussex. And today I'm going to be talking to you about our experience with apprentices. I'm going to explain the apprentice levy to you. I'm going to show you how we applied the levy within the finance department at University Hospital Sussex. I'm going to talk about the background and the approach to how we looked at and what uses we had for the apprentices within the finance team, and what types of experience we offered to them, and how we dealt with their training and any problems they had during the 18 months that they've been with us. I'm going to talk to you about how we recruited them, so how we approached that, and I'm going to talk to you about our experience with the provider, which was Chichester College. Talk to you about how we went about planning for their exams and for their endpoint assessments, which is their final assessments for AAT level 3. And now what the next steps are. So we're not at the end of the journey. So there's still 3 months to go for this present cohort. So I'm just going to talk about what the next steps are for our apprentices. And then at the end, I'm just going to signpost you to some useful websites that I think you'll find beneficial if there's people on the call that want to know more about where to go to get information. So hopefully that fits with what you thought I'd be presenting today. So let me just kick off by talking a bit about the apprentice levy. So this is the means that we pay the colleges who provide the apprentices with appropriate apprentice training. So the levy was introduced in 2017, and it's a way of ring fencing money to make sure that apprenticeship training is funded by large organisations. So any organisation with a pay bill over 3 million a year needs to pay into this levy. So there's not that many, so less than 2% of UK employers. And it equates to 0.5% of your pay bill, your total pay bill, with 15k of that being exempt. You have to report and pay the levy to report that through HMRC, through the PAYE process. And levy is payable and must be reported on the employer payment summary every month. So this is normally done by the apprentice team. So depending on the size of your organisation, I'm hoping that there is either within your HR team or organisational development team, depending on the size of your organisation. Obviously at University Hospital Sussex, we're a large acute trust. So we have a dedicated apprentice team who do that reporting for us. And then, so the levy funds for training and education can be spent on new or existing members of staff. So I think that's a misconception. Sometimes people think that it is just for newly appointed people, but it's also for existing staff. So if there's people in your department that um, you know you can use this as appropriate training for them. And there's no upper age limit, and I'll talk to you a bit about the ages of our apprentices. So a bit more about the levy. So what it can and can't be used for. So the levy can be used for educational trips or a professional event, so long as they're within the standard or assessment plan. So you can use them for that, but you can't use them for recruitment costs, for their salaries, or any other types of costs in hiring them. So you can't use them for the cost of setting up the program or for professional licenses or travel or things like that. So bear that in mind. So you're supposed to be employing these apprentices. So the levy doesn't cover any of the salary or internal training costs. So and it can only be paid to an approved training provider, or a university or an endpoint assessment organisation. So those levy funds. So at the end of this presentation, I'll show you where you can find providers that are approved, and that way you can find ones in your local area that may offer appropriate training. So yeah, so they can only be, those funds are only ring fenced for those approved training providers. And if you don't spend the funds that are earmarked, so your 12% of your pay bill, then they get returned back to the government as unspent levy. And because we have nearly 4 million of levy every year, unfortunately, we have to return 200,000 of that approximately a month. So it's your interests, because it's the trust money, to try and find opportunities where you can utilize that fund. There are some changes on the horizon, and the government is now is looking to call it the Growth and Skills Levy. So the whole thing is looking to be reformed, and as a result of that, some of the high level 7 apprenticeships may be defunded. So but that's yet to be finalized. So we, in our department, we do have some apprenticeships at level 7, and obviously that we're not sure how this will be introduced, these changes. I'm hoping it'll be not straight away, that we'll have a few years grace, but yeah, so that's under consideration at the moment. So how did we apply this at my organisation? So as I said, it was 0.5% of our annual pay bill, so that equates to nearly £4 million. And it went into the apprenticeship services account. So that's a ring-fenced account that the apprenticeship team use. So we set out a written agreement once we'd identified the training provider, so that it's clear what responsibilities are whose. So, how would the college be looking at their training and what types of experience, and on our part, how we would be ensuring that the apprentices had the necessary experience to pass their apprenticeship. So the cost of the apprenticeship is split over the duration, and it's paid for by our apprenticeship team to the training provider. So in this instance, we chose Chichester College. That's our local college because we're quite widespread across Sussex, and they'd already been providing these apprenticeships, so we vetted them. The cost that we've had to pay for our level 3 assistant accountants is £15,000. And you'll find that, you know, some colleges might be less, but you'll find most colleges will want to maximize how much they're being paid through the levy. So obviously they're going to go for the highest amount, and 15,000 at level 3 is the highest amount. So we've got someone inquiring about level 2 in our department, and that's £7,000. So obviously it's different to if you went to this college to study AAT individually, you wouldn't be charged those high fees. But this is the way it works with colleges, that they'll obviously try and get the most out of their provide the levy funds. And so there's regular meetings held to make sure that we're providing them with the required academic progress. They'll talk about that in the next slide. So a bit about University Hospital Sussex. So we're a very large finance department. We have approximately 140 staff, and we're based in 3 main sites across the southeast, so Brighton, Worthing and Chichester. We have 5 hospital sites, but these are the main sites where our teams are based. We've had apprentices through the department in the past, but that's been an ad hoc arrangement. So back in 23, it was thought that we need to do something on a larger scale, because there were a number of teams that needed some support, and the manager was confident they could provide apprentices with the appropriate experience. So we advertised in the local press and in social media for apprentices in the local community. So as I said, we picked Chichester College, which was a local college, given that they have a campus on site, and they're able to do face-to-face courses. So that would work well for the way that we work in a hybrid way, but obviously there's the ability for these apprentices then to go to college and see a tutor face-to-face. So we went through a 1-day interview process. So we invited a whole host of different people to interview. The panel was made up of a number of finance people and members of the apprentice team, who were there to sort of advise on, you know, how we should be talking to them, what kind of questions we should be posing, and how to structure the day. So it was quite an intense day. It's a long day. You've got to, you know, be conscious that you're talking to people a lot of times that have had no experience of finance. And that's what we wanted. We wanted people from the community that possibly hadn't had a finance background, but wanted the opportunity. So this was our way of giving back. And in the end, once that was all said and done, we had a mix of ages and experience recruited to. So out of our 6 apprentices, 4 of them were actually older, so they were in their 30s, I'd say, so late 20s and 30s, and only 2 were sort of school leaver age. And that kind of reflected the fact that, you know, there's quite a lot of people within the community that perhaps started a career or were in jobs where they didn't see, you know, a future. So, you know, for example, we had one person who had been working in a restaurant, was a supervisor in a restaurant for a number of years and just wanted to change. One person came from a local council, so but was doing a very junior role for a long time and just wanted to change. You know, one person straight from school hadn't really thought about what they wanted to do, but saw this as a good opportunity to get some qualifications and find out more about finance. So I wouldn't say we were quite surprised by the level of interest and also the level of candidates. So that's we ended up with 6 really good people. So in September 23, the apprentices started, and they were placed within different teams within the finance department. So we had this cohort for 18 months. So as I said, we've still got 3 months left of that. Most of them have finished their final exams, but there's still a few that have to complete. So some of them were placed, 3 of them were placed within the business partnering function. We had one reporting to myself. I'm working in accounts payable, and we had one in the efficiency team and one in the capital team. So different types of experience and different levels that I'd say that they and understanding background, but none of them came from a traditional finance background. So we basically treated these apprentices, as we would with every other employee, but we did go that extra mile, and we did assign a buddy and a course mentor for them for the duration, so they can have that assistance. So let me just talk a bit about the college. So the college provided all the coursework and the online teaching material. So what they did was 1 day a week. So we earmarked Tuesdays normally, where they went to college face to face, but also they were supplemented with online teaching. We had the college operating term time working, so it's very much traditional terms as you would at school and college. So normally there was downtime for about up to 10 weeks in the summer. They also had half terms as you would at school. So for a week every term, they wouldn't be required in college. So that's where we had to think about where they, in those holiday periods, where they would traditionally be going 1 day a week into college, that we needed to provide them with the appropriate training while they were still at work. So slightly, that did cause within our managers some difficulties, and I'd say that they were working in operational roles. So for example, the month-end process and at budget time, the teams could still do with their help. So it was sometimes a bit of a push and pull, and there was some give and take. So for example, it was agreed with some that they could, if they worked the 5-day period, they could have a block off at the end of the month. If they worked in the deadline driven days, that they could make up those days in a different period, and that worked out. But that did take some negotiation, and we had a few teething problems with that. So just to say about term time working. The other thing about the 10-week summer break at college, we use that to do some rotations. So we're conscious that to pass their practical experience, they and the logbook of competencies, they need to have had the required experience. So a lot of them weren't getting a rounded experience. So what we did within that 10-week period, we for the day they would be at college, we organised a rotation through different departments, mostly just 1 or 2 departments, but that was the plan, is that they as far as possible worked in that team and gained that experience so they could demonstrate that in their logbooks. So how we dealt with the college, it wasn't, I'll be honest, it wasn't all great. So we did have monthly meetings with the college reps. So let me just talk about some of the cons that we had. Halfway through, the tutor for the main course resigned, and they struggled to provide a replacement. So that wasn't great. Some of the learning material that we had wasn't actually right. So some of the examples and some of the material just didn't make sense. So this is a few examples of where things fell down. We also had, when they were doing some of their exams, the environment wasn't right, so there was noise within the exam room that actually put off some of our candidates. So I think you just it's important to have a close relationship, and we did have a close relationship, and they did hold their hands up to some of these things. So and tried to work with us. So I would say that choosing the provider carefully is very important. So maybe do a college visit, maybe talk to them about if things go wrong, how will they put things right. So I think it's really important that you vet the college carefully to see not just what they're advertising, but the real practical aspects of where things can go wrong. I would say that all of our apprentices worked really hard. So they got excellent exam results, surprising themselves even. So two of our apprentices have got have needed extra help. So they needed extra time. They've got some special needs. So the college did work with them to provide that extra help and extra tuition, where they found some of the material quite challenging. But as a result of that, they got some, most of them went through first time passes and some really good exam results. And where they didn't pass, some of them, the college stepped in and provided some extra help. And we also gave them the time to do that. So I would say that for some of our apprentices, it has been quite a steep learning curve, especially at the start where they're not used to working and studying. So the mentors and the buddies had their work cut out to sort of explain to them how to go about structuring their day, how to plan their day. So my advice to them was to actually come into work earlier, so even an hour earlier, so they could actually get some time at the start of the day where they're not disturbed, find a meeting room and just do a bit of college work and do as much of work as they can, so that at the end of the day they're not rushing home to study, especially closer to the exam period. So I mean, obviously everyone is slightly different, so it doesn't work for everyone, but the thing to do is to actually talk with them and see what works best. So there's a number of different exams for level 3 AAT. We also had, as I said, we've got a number of graduates that have been on the national graduate team and also scheme, and also we've got apprentices that previously went through the department. So they were really good in helping sort of mentor our apprentices. And the other thing they need to do, so for example, most of them have finished their exams now in December, but what the next step for them is to complete a logbook of their practical experience. So our managers need to sign off knowledge, skills and behaviours in the apprenticeship standards, and this is known as the gateway process. And at the end of that, each apprentice is going to have an endpoint assessment of their competencies, and they'll actually be interviewed face to face by the awarding organisation. So that interview process is starting for some of them in the next few months. And I have it on good authority from a previous apprentice is that they're actually quite challenging. They're not easy because everything that they put in their logbook will be double and triple checked. So, for example, if they said they've had experience of loading a journal, they'll want to see specific time and place with email backup of what they actually were asked to do and did they do it in the time frame, and they will ask searching questions as to who asked you to do the journal, where did that go, how did you check it was right, how, what was the result of that journal. So they'll go through the whole process to see and test the apprentice. So I'm only going off what I've been told, but the person in question didn't had to have an extra interview because the assessor wasn't fully happy. So, and I've heard that happens. So we've prepared our apprentices for that this time round. We're hoping we can brief them as well as possible for that. So that's coming in the next few months. So they're in their last 3 months of the scheme. So once they pass their exam and their endpoint assessment, we're looking at what they do afterwards. So we have been giving them help with writing job applications and with interview practice. And I'm sure it's the same for a lot of your organizations, but we've actually got a recruitment freeze within our trust. I'm sure it's the same sort of thing for a lot of you. We had some vacancies in the department as a result of people leaving. So we were able to offer some roles to most of the apprentices. So 4 have been successful in gaining band 4 and band 5 roles within the department. Completely different teams, completely different areas. But they were really keen to stay. And obviously, it's a shame we don't have roles at the moment for everyone. But what we did have was a competitive interview process. So these weren't ring fenced for the apprentices. These were roles that was internal candidates only. So we had, team members from all over the department that were applying for these roles. So it kind of shows the success of what we did, given that the 4 roles that we had were all filled by apprentices. So it's a real vote of confidence in that scheme. And the fact, I'll say myself, from my experience, I've seen them mature over the year or so that they've been with us. You can see how they were when they joined, very green, very new, not really understanding, the terminology and even how to act within an office environment. So, because a lot of them hadn't worked in an office environment before. So yeah, completely new, but it's great to see that they're flourishing now. And a few of them have even gone into the quite challenging business partnering role. So it's great to see. So most of them are looking to continue with their AAT qualifications and look forward to doing either ACCA or CIMA. So we will be supporting them through that. And so once they have the final exit interview, we'll sign them off as completed the apprenticeship. And at the end of March, that'll be it. So we will hopefully find the other 2 roles within the department. If it doesn't come up, then we're going to signpost them to other areas where they can try and find employment. But the hope is that we can keep all of them. So that's it from hopefully that's been helpful for you, just giving you a whistle-stop tour of how we've gone about and my experience with finance apprentices. And I just wanted to, finally, I just wanted to signpost everyone to some useful websites. So if you are thinking of employing an apprentice, a really good website is the Institute of Apprenticeships and Technical Education, so IFATE. And if you go into that website, it talks about what employers need to do, what's required, and the different levels of apprenticeships and technical qualifications. So um, it'll also help you find training providers more importantly within your local area. So they're all registered, and you can put in the types of jobs that you're looking for. So a few examples there of the different levels, different job titles and the different levels. So for example, R1 that we had was an accounts assistant, for example, and that's recommended. This is the level 2 AAT, and the recommended duration is 12 months to the final gateway. The endpoint assessment is 3 months. So this is a 15-month apprenticeship. Funding is 7,000, and it applies equally to legal, finance, and accounting apprenticeships. So yeah, so what you can do when you go in there is look at the different job titles and see what's appropriate if you are thinking of employing an apprentice. And of course, there is a lot of information on in the Department of Education website about apprenticeships, and also the future of, as I touched on, it might be changing, and it might be called something differently in the future, but that's with the new government, and we still don't know about the changes. So but that's the institute is really a great website to look at. And if you have your own teams, apprentice teams, or HR teams, that organizational development teams that deal with apprentices, it's useful to try and find someone in your organization that actually deals with that, because you don't know all the ins and outs. So especially if you're new to it, I've sought advice from our apprenticeship team a number of times, and they've been just invaluable when you've got, for example, where they've needed extra help, where you've needed to talk to the college about what's happening. They've been great advisors to us. So I would encourage you all to do that. But that was it. So enough talking from me. I was just going to open it up now to people. If you had any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But if I can't, I'll take it away and come back to you. But yeah, any questions?
So you have a couple in the chat. There's one that goes back to one of your earlier slides from Claire, which says, I'm interested to understand who attends those regular meetings from the trust side. Is this your apprenticeship team, line manager, or something else?
Yeah, so it's normally the line manager, not the apprenticeship team. It's just the line manager and the rep from the college. So it won't be a college tutor. It won't be the tutor that is asking those questions and talking in there. It'll be the college rep who normally tries to smooth out any problems. So it's more of a pastoral call. So it's more just sort of saying where they're at, how they're feeling. And for example, they, at the end of the review meeting, they were asking us to grade the college were asking us to grade their performance in the time period between reviews, and we didn't feel that was appropriate, really, because it felt artificial. So because everyone has a different scale, so if you rating them in different attributes on a scale of 1 to 10, everyone has their own. So kind of did away with that. So so yeah, so things like that. but also if they needed extra support or extra learning, or they weren't happy, then it was a good forum to talk. So yeah, it was just the line manager and the rep from the college.
Claire's got the hand up as well, so if you want to jump in.
All right, if I just elaborate a little bit on it. I think when I wrote the questionnaire, in my mind it was kind of more of it's kind of irregular. I hadn't realised you were having sort of some difficulties with the college. I thought this was a regular catch up on performance, and the reason I asked is we're a very, very small team, and it's the capacity to do things like that. We don't have an apprentice team. My team is 30 something whole-time equivalents, so
Sure.
trying to find the capacity to do that line management support, to liaise with the college and all of that, that's where we're really having some difficulties.
Yeah, I think you have to just be open and honest, have those discussions with the line manager of the apprentice and say, this is something that you need to do. And so that time invested with the apprentice is really important. So, regular catch-ups, regular one-to-ones, check on whether they're actually getting on with the studies and how they're feeling. Because, it is hard to study and work, and so they have challenges, and even within the department, navigating a busy department where there's tensions within the teams. They may not have been exposed to that type of environment before, so it's difficult there, but I guess you just have to do your best to work with the manager of that apprentice to give them the support.
Thank you.
There's another question from Sarah. Now these 6 are coming to the end of their apprenticeships, will you be recruiting a new cohort? Do you have specific funding put aside?
Yeah, good question. Because of the recruitment freeze, we're not able to. I guess also the capacity in the team. So because these apprentices have been successful in gaining employment, we just don't have the capacity at the moment. But it is definitely something that we'll look to do in the future once we're in a more financial stable environment, and the recruitment freeze is lifted. We would definitely look at perhaps not 6, but a smaller number. But yeah, we are looking at that.
And then Warren has a few questions. So the first one is, do you have anyone on the level 7 apprenticeship?
Yes, we do. So existing employees, I think we've got 2, and so they were. I think one is a band 5 and one is a band 6. So they had been studying for accounting body exams, so CIMA, I think, and ACCA respectively, but they'd taken a break and they'd come back to it. So the study policy within our department is that we signpost our staff to doing apprenticeship routes, mainly because then we can claim through the levy. So they're studying. I can't remember if it's BPP or Kaplan, one of the leading providers, and they're doing the level 7 through that.
Do you have a separate study policy for staff not on the apprenticeship, and how did those staff feel that this was introduced?
Yeah, so we have a study policy which is separate to the apprenticeship route, obviously, and I think they, on the whole, I think they were quite welcoming to the apprenticeships. Obviously, it's different. So we offer the same opportunities to study, and the policy does signpost people to doing level 7 apprenticeships. But mostly our staff don't really do AAT. Most of them would want to do ACCA or CIMAs or one of the bigger organizations. So I think on the whole it was accepted that we had this cohort come through, and everyone was pretty supportive of them.
And another question from Claire: did you have vacant roles in your establishment for the apprentices to go into while they were on the apprenticeship?
Yeah, so I think no, as I said, we didn't because of the recruitment freeze, and it wasn't part of our policy to have someone with a job earmarked for them. I know the managers of the teams they were in were really keen that we kept them, but obviously, you know, we weren't able to do that because they came to rely on them, and they were you know, so good that they were doing over and beyond what they were brought in to do, because they, you know, were so capable. So we've been lucky in that we've been successful, but we didn't have earmarked roles for them.
And do you want to jump in, Claire?
If I could, yes, thank you. The question was more about when you took them on. How did you fund those 6 roles for 18 months? Were you carrying 6 vacancies that those people went into? I know I appreciate what you're saying about it at the end. It's difficult, but how did you actually bring them in the first place and fund those roles?
Yes, so we had those roles earmarked. So they were vacancies at the time. So yeah, so it was, but obviously they've done over and beyond what they were brought in to do. So I would say most of them were operating at the sort of band 5, band 6 level, and certainly some of the work that they were doing. And that's something that we were conscious of, is that you kind of had to rein them in because they wanted to do more, and we're running meetings themselves, and we're in a lot of instances doing work over and beyond their remit. So that's not what they were brought in to do, but what they ended up doing. So you know, again, it was just working with them to sort of get the most appropriate experience for them, and sort of rein in some of the managers where they were doing work that over beyond the expectations that we had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's more of a comment from Lauren.
Yeah.
I think that's it for questions, unless anybody else has any last minute questions, but if not, thank you very much. I thought that was really insightful, and hopefully everybody else did too. And thanks to everyone for booking on.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.